6. I'm gonna start making it a bit of a habit now and then. During our other games, we should take a short video to do a bit of a review and a critique kind of video on the game that came before it. So, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Right away, you get to see half of the intro to Civilization 6 here. Just because we were halfway through it when the video officially started. But, as you can see, it's just basically giving a brief showmanship of the story of history throughout the ages. As in comparison to like Civilization 4 and so on, they've all had some kind of small opening video. But as for Civ 6, it's gotta be one of the longest intro scenes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything bad about it. This one's actually really kind of interesting to watch. That ain't bad right there, though. Not at all. Anyway, now we sit and wait and see when we get to the menu. We have all the people all the companies that have put a hand into it, so on and so forth. Title screen, it's a bit finicky now and then. I mean, ultimately, single player is kind of a waste, if you ask me, just a little. Just because, honestly, if you wanted to play a single player game, all you'd have to do is go to multiplayer and go to Hot Seat. That's all that is. Because you can put in all the effort to make the game. I'm just going to quickly hit confirm settings just to show you. And you can turn the random AIs into other players, and you can leave them as AIs. It's a computer. You've got human, closed, AI. Basically, if you wanted to play single player, you just leave them all AI and make the game. You just being the one player in it. So, sure, I mean... Ooh, excuse me, sorry, I'm eating my lunch too at the same time. Seriously though, the single player, you know, story mode scenario stuff isn't bad. Some of it can be really foolish though. In truth, it ain't bad. It could be better. I mean, really, if you wanted a scenario to run through, it'd be better if you just played, like, say, Assassin's Creed or something like that, because at least the single-player thing would make sense. Now, the multiplayer personality of this game, I would also say, would be more of something that, if they implemented it into Assassin's Creed, I think that game would be one of the best. If they put in, say, the multiplayer feature, they took the time to wire it the way they've got it going for all the, you know, missions and things you can do. I could see Assassin's Creed pulling something basically like Civilization, only in a slightly different angle. I think if these two companies, 2K, the people who made Civilization 6 and Assassin's Creed, were to come together, honestly, I would say that would be something pretty damn good to go there. Now, back to Civilization 6. Multiplayer, on the other hand, is something else. Because, literally, you play on the internet, either way, you can have your friends join you, random people around you who might be playing, and so on. It ain't a terrible way to go, but now, if you were to, say, put in a hot seat, you get the same functionality out of an AI as some of the lesser players of Civ 6. Apart from me talking, just so it's quite clear and obvious, is all in-game audio. I don't ever usually put in music, I don't ever usually put in anything but me, someone else talking about a game or playing a game. That is usually my contribution and me doing all this in video for you all to enjoy. Me, I usually just look at this and be like, okay, this is your standard Civilization game. You're gonna find someone who's going through the menus, fiddling around with what they can do, what all they can change to, better their playing, or lessening their playing for entertainment. Now, you have your basic ways you can win the game. You have all your menus. I don't see much of an issue. I do see, though, when you go out and spend like $90 on the deluxe edition of the game, you should get a little more than just the base game and one of the dozens upon dozens of add-on content. When you spend $90 like I did on mine, you should at least get the base game. You should get a few of the add-ons. You may not need all of them, but not more than, like 4 or 5, if they're going to be just add-on Civilization content. It's kind of pointless when you have all these as an addition for the microtransactions, or all this for, just a few extra dollars. This isn't a terrible thing. But when you go out and spend a decent chunk of money on a good video game, you don't want to have to sit there and look for every little thing that is, basically in some of the other games was just already in there. This stuff was really an annoyance the first time I ever really looked at it. Because I saw these and was like, oh no. Did they make something basically, it's just you throw money at it and it doesn't really do anything but annoy you and piss you off? I'm like, this is basically what the microtransaction does. It squeezes every little penny for just stuff that it will be additionally annoying. I'm sure some of the ideas they have aren't terrible. I'm just saying. I know there's a lot of hairs and things that go into making this kind of stuff, but if you're gonna make someone pay almost $100 for a brand new game, and you don't at least give them a little bit of something extra, say, for example, the additional maps, the additional ways to play the game, I see that it's kind of a tad expensive. And for someone like me, when it comes down to it, if it's really something good, I will continue to follow it from time to time. I originally started playing Civilization for Revolution way back when it was on just DS. Now, I mean DS Lights, like the ones some people might know. You open it and you get the one screen hinge that starts to mess up, and you try to stretch it so you can use it, and it snaps the hinge. instantly for that system, it's a $50 drop. When you get one that has the hinge that breaks a little bit, it'll still function just fine, but it's just, you know, one of those things. And back then, you had stuff like this, and this just automatically thrown in there. You had these kind of things. You had multiple places you can do, multiple ways to play. You didn't have to stick to just, you know, oh, hey, we have something like this guy and something like this guy's, or for me, these two that were just given pretty much, free availabilities and so on. Me, I bought this one right out. This one was a straight additive to the game. And then, literally 2 weeks after I bought this, they made this one additional. But you have stuff like this guy, or this guy. All of these things which are in pretty low standards for what you can get from a game. But I mean, seriously, if you're gonna squeeze someone's wallet for every additional penny you can get out of it, at least give them, when they start buying something at such a high price, at least give them something like extra that's actually worth getting. Not a one scenario situation which is not even maybe an hour's worth of playthrough. You can beat this, literally, I've heard and seen, in under an hour. You can also, with each of these, the races and the scenario situations, you can literally earn the trophies, the recognizations for completing it, in everything but the scenarios. It's really kind of pointless. You can literally get, say, the additive missions for for Indonesian and the Kashmir. You can get the trophies for all of these in any other situation but the scenario. And a trophy in PlayStation is just, you know, recognition you did something very few people can. Quote unquote. Now, the strange thing is, these weren't cheap. This was like a $12 pack when I first saw it. I was like, I ain't buying that. As time progressed, it went down to 8 and then like 10 on occasion. It went down to 10 first, and then it went down to 8 with one of their, you know, discounts about this time last year, something like that. When this was on sale, I bought it. I snagged it right up. And then, like I said, 2 weeks later, it became free. And I was like, what the fuck? Now, stuff like this, the season pass and all that, you can get these usually in every game nowadays, but it's just, if you buy these, they're far cheaper than buying the season pass. I don't know how many of you notice this. You get the same exact stuff from buying the season pass, far cheaper when you're just buying the individual packs and such that labels. Sure, you may get one little fragment of a hair more with this, but at a great higher cost. And this isn't just saying for this game, it's for every game that has microtransactions in it. This, all these are exactly the same as buying this. Only, like I said, at 1/3 usually the price. Yeah, for example, the this pass here is $39.99, and it's basically just giving you some of these smaller packs. Let's. I'm gonna quickly check this one's price tag just to see. Yeah, literally, this one is $8.99. That's a big difference, $8.99 versus $39.99. And that's just saying, that's a third of this. Not even, a little less than a third. This one, again, same thing. Some of them are even cheaper than that. You get the same stuff, the same functionalities, the same everything. But the reason it's such a situational difference is these will make you pay literally $5 or so less than this will. Or let me show you the other one. This one. Betcha this one is double the price of the first one. My bad. This one's not even available. I literally just looked this up. It's just something you get if you fully 100% buy the most expensive free release game. It comes in a secondary disc apparently to what it says. So this one isn't even available. Why they even have it on here as a purchasable thing, I have no idea. But yeah, all these are literally 1/3 or less of this thing. The only issue these have that people are gonna quote unquote say, oh, but they have this so many payments over so little time. No, it isn't. For someone just starting out and say, you know, their credit history, things like this will help their credit. Little transactions like this, someone just starting to build up, say, credit line, those sorts of things. These little payments, these little things, in such numbers, will slowly build their credit. They'll be more able to get better loans because their credit score will be that much higher. I don't know how they all, you know, figure these out, but whatever they're doing, these little online purchases are far better because the banks and the people who let loans out will look at stuff like these and say, okay, this person has more transactions, more of a history, not really having that many issues as compared to someone who goes out and buys like one of these. Because of one of three particular reasons. These littler transactions are like, okay, they've got more money than they have on the side. They've got more of this. They've got more of that. Because they're able to buy more. As in someone who goes out and spends a lot and gets one particular thing. I'm not sure why that is. It's just, I guess, the way it looks. It makes life more deceiving and deceptive that way. But this is just what I've learned from all sorts of different places over the years. Something like this transaction, remember, if you're going out and buying the game directly without a card or say with cash in hand, that's a different type of credit. That doesn't count towards a loan or anything. These littler things will help you build your credit. Now, I'm not saying go dump your money on these things, no. I'm just saying, overall in general, this is my issue with games like Civilization or online video games, is these things. They advertise something 4 dozen times more, and you can get the same stuff from buying their littler packs. And this particular incident with this one, where you click on it and there's nothing but it says, hey, you get the extra disc. Who the hell is going to care now when the content isn't even worth it? And why do they even have it advertised if you can't buy it? I'm just saying, this is what I have issues with in a lot of video games lately. Biggest waste of time there is. Biggest issue in video games that there is. Now, with all that said and done, then you have your Hall of Fame, how many times and what people you've used, what characters you've completed the game with, all that. As you can see, I've only ever played as Cleopatra and Alexander the Great. I really have no care to play as any of these other characters. Mainly because, honestly, those two civilizations are my best. They're my best compatible, scenarios and situations that I've learned to deal with. You can always tell the kind of player you're dealing with by how many of these are lit up. The more of these you have lit up, and I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I've noticed if you have someone like me, for example, who's played games with just 2 different types of characters and left the rest of them out of it, this tells me that this person knows their best characters. And if you look at how many games I have played of this, just in general, it's kind of funny. You can also, for some of you, look and see how far back their gaming repertoire with the Civilization branch goes. Because these 2 characters I started playing with way back on the DS Lite, like I was saying earlier. This shows that I have a long history with those characters. The more characters you have, the less repertoireable your situation is. Because that means you're always trying to learn a different civilization's playstyle. That means you're trying them out. And I'm just like, after a few games, you learn what characters you're really good at playing with, and you just kind of stick with them. That, or you're just really good with those 2. I've kind of seen that over the years. I jumped back to Civilization 3 and 4 era pretty much when I started, in Civilization Revelations, Civilization Revolutions. You see these other digital formats of Civilization showing up, and it kind of just, you learn one type of playstyle, you kind of tend to stick with it. And that's just how it goes. You don't really have to play as all these other characters if you know how to play as 1 or 2 of them. You can always stick with those, usually. And this is just me personally noticing this particular way of going about it. Now you have your tutorials for those of you who are new to the Civilization branch, and I know Civilization is something that's a generational situation. Basically, you have people who have never played a video game in their life recently, just starting to play games, Or you have people like, for example, who make video games. They've probably grown up wanting something to play with, as, you know, a side note, something to keep their minds occupied from to disillusion themselves from reality kind of deal. They take themselves away so that they can escape. They use video games to their advantage. And then you have people who grew up before them who didn't have that stuff, who didn't care, who all sorts of these different things. Now, I'm not saying any of it's bad. And I'm just saying you have all these different types of people. Some people grew up not having any kind of situation like that at all. And you have people who are kind of, you know, okay, this isn't terrible, this isn't horrible, just kind of starting out, jumping into it a little bit. So you have those people who are also trenders, those who kind of jump into something now, depending on where they're at in life, those sorts of things. They've all come to realize that, or are starting to realize, in my opinion, and my frank experience in life, that this particular series has been out a while, and everyone has their own different ways of playing about it. Basically, all this stems down to how you want to play the game. They're implementing a story I'm seeing more recently, they're kind of still branching off this way a bit more, but I'm seeing this as kind of falling back. Mostly just because, yeah, it's not really about it's not building the civilizations for some people who still play, or some of those older people such as myself who still do play. I've literally gone from every time I get out the door of what I'm doing, playing a video game, so almost debating on leaving the video game genres entirely just because video games lost that sense of need, really. You reach people like me who are getting into their mid-20s, getting towards that early 30s area nowadays, who once sat around and played these games for hours, days straight at a time when you had the chance. You get up, you eat, sleep, you drink some water, a lot of sugary substances, and you play video games in your spare time. And that was the way things went for a long time. You had people who watched cartoons, who sat around, did almost nothing. You had people who were... Well, long story short, getting to the point is, overall, my general rating and view of everything, this game for me gets a 3 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. Honestly, because sometimes even the graphic gameplay as you're in a game just doesn't do it. It just doesn't seem to fit. They all have their little quirks and things now and then, but I mean, overall, the general view of the game just kind of throws it off. And, in truth, if I had to say it, there's just some issues technologically in the game that are problems. After a little while, you start to have more glitches, you have more graphical displacements, you have these bit of game ramp-up situations, which, if you're not expecting it, can really worsen the mood of the game. Technologically, though, and visually, there's been a lot of more need for working on this. Because literally the graphics look kind of cartoonish when you look at them in game really close up. You have those graphical errors when you start to move things around. Some of the game tags, city game tags still, will glitch out be somewhere else completely away from where they need to be. You'll have this little spot in the middle of, like, say, a couple battlefields where there's this white, like, city tag, and it says it can attack everybody, and nobody knows what the fuck's going on with it because something's caught in the code or something's technologically not right with that area. Now, I know these games are monumentally huge. Like games like No Man's Skies, the Civilization franchise in general, are a lot of wear and tear on game systems and electronics. The reason I'm saying that is because, literally, on computers, I've seen the insides of these computers, these laptops people bring around, used to bring around where I used to be, hang out, and people I used to hang with and talk to and learn from, would have to fix these computers and find out what's wrong with them in the internal side of things, because games like Civilization and No Man's Skies, these really huge, monumentous-sized games, run every bit of your computer to the ground 10 times faster than games like, for example, Skyrim, or what else was the early games that I realized? Oh, I'm thinking. Final Fantasy. The games that have a set area, they have a set story, they have a set straightforward. Or games, for example, that are multiplayer, or this or that, you know, one or the other scenario games. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad way to be. I love the franchise. Over the years, things were better. They had better options, more things you could do, or less things you can do, depending. And back then, the characters didn't look nothing like they have in this game. Alexander the Great had long blonde hair, looked like he was wearing bronze all the time. You know, these things all add up. Nowadays, you've got people who are trying to make characters in video games so realistic-like that it's really buzzkill. You have... Back then, you had less restrictions on things you could do, less things, you know, this and that. Things didn't matter as much. But now you have things that people used to use to get out of reality becoming more reality-like. It's really a killer. It destroys the whole franchise. It destroys everything that needs to be done to keep, you know, people happy and coming back. And all these issues, the microtransactions, everything just kills it almost completely. To the point where usually, if something's getting a 2-star or 1-star review from me, that's a problem. That's something I won't ever really pick up again if it gets a 2-star or a 1-star. For example, another game company that I used to literally sit down and play every game that they've ever made, or I've heard of it, or I've looked into it, Konami. Konami used to have Castlevania. They used to have a great monumental, you know, hold on a lot of the gaming communities with, say, Castlevania, the whole series of Castlevania, Lords of Shadows, and all of them. You had Yu-Gi-Oh! You had such as, you know, games like that revolutionized the industry. You had people who cared. You had people who did things. Now you have PlayStation 5s. You have stuff that's, you know, you kick it to the curb. You bring it back from the curb, you kick it back to the curb again. You have something good, and yet you're wasting a lot of time and resources having people crank out stuff so fast. You're destroying the whole thing, all the things you built, all the things that people before you have built. And I'm looking at this, right, going at all this stuff. Back then, Hot Seat was a single-player, multiplayer scenario you could do. You didn't have this new game, load game scenario, create a game crap. You still create a game either way. You create a game in Hot Seat, it's the same thing as single-player. You have internet multiplayer matches, which, again, you can technically do it all on your own, too. That kind of versatility, wonderful. Wonderful idea. You can make multiplayer have a hot seat, you can make it have a single player such situation. That's okay. But if you're going to do that, figure a way to take this out. Tutorial, great. You have a tutorial situation, great. You don't need multiple menu areas saying scenario, play now, load game, create a game. You already did that here. You already have that here. If you're gonna, waste time doing these things, at least explain that a little more. You know what I mean? At least put a tutorial or something saying, hey, all this is in one menu. All this is in one setup. Don't sit there trying to overcomplicate things. People are just causing more havoc pushing these things around. You have stuff way back when where people lived a lot longer than they do today. You have things that once upon a time were relieving stress, releasing the scenarios, bringing people together. And now you have graphical glitches, garbage visuals. It's Fallout 76, and I'm saying that right square now. That was a mistake. Fallout 76 was a mistake. And there's a lot of reason for that. And right now, the trend I'm seeing with these games isn't far behind. It isn't. Especially with this double menu thing. If you're gonna do that, try to add it all into one menu spot, like they used to do back on PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1. If you wanted multiplayer, you hooked the controller in, for me at least, right to the system. You didn't have these things you could do hundreds of feet away. You had one menu, you had one functionality that had many uses. Or you have the N64 scenario days. I mean, but that's not bad either. Those old retro things, those were a turn of the time, many times over. Many, many times over. You're sitting there with stuff like Game Boy Colors back in my day, Game Boy Advance, SP, those kind of game systems that nowadays people don't look at them no more, because you know what? Back then, things were built to last. They lasted longer than 5 minutes. They lasted longer than a year. Back then, even today, there's still some people I run into on a daily basis who literally still talk about those good old days. Who still reminisce on all the good times they had and wanting to pass that on to the next generation. And you have stuff like PlayStation 5 and 6 nowadays that you have Xbox 6 whatever X ... YZ etc. When I was growing up, there wasn't none of that. You could sit on your N64 And you could talk about those good old retro days and not have a damn problem. Because you know what? Back then, even today, I still appreciate all those things from back then because, honestly, same menu as if I were to create a game in there, as I'm sure it's probably the same sitting in the single player too. Only difference is the way the menu works. This situation is far more confusing than this. This works. Looking at this, I'll be like, okay, World Age. If I wanted it brand new, nothing real to, things developed and such for a bigger challenge, sure. There it is. Standard. Old world. Things really don't change. So on. It's listed out really well. I'm not saying you couldn't, add an extra box over in this blank section over there. And, for character selection, you could always just do it like you have now. In this situation, you have all the ways to change your options. You have literally everything right here. See, it's all right there. You have the ways you can win. Say if you're a cultural person, you'll always have that one on. Domination, you want to take over the world, there you go. More leveling options such as what ways you rule the world, how soon you start, when you start, how fast you can work your game pace and all. You want to play as 2, 3, maybe 9 Theodore Roosevelts? You turn these off, there you go, problem solved. Yes, that has actually been something we've done on this channel a couple of times. We've had either Game and Josh, myself, we've all played as Theodore Roosevelt or so on, so forth, those sorts of things. All the different options in this scenario of what game ways you can play. Say you want to play with barbarians that are dynamic, there you go. You want to turn tech situations on and off? There you go. You want to make it more realistic to where you have to have every possible resource to get your techs? There you have it. You want to be able to try to talk your way out of problems with the barbarians? There you go. Here's the part where it becomes you can play as 2 players right on your system with the same controller. You have possibility of even adding double controller menu functionality. You have a lot of different things you can do. All right here. You can add more, you can take less, so on. You want to see how far you can build against one AI? Here you go. It's just slowly, it's creeping up there, It's not that hard to do all these. This is the way to keep the menu. This right here, the multiplayer menu and such, that's a star in my book. Because it's easy. You can understand it. You can learn what you're doing, how you're going about it. This way tells you all about the character and what you're starting with. This right here is a perfect single player game. this works right here. But with that, my review of Civilization 6 is 3 out of 5. Your basic rating scale.
Of life beneath water, to the great beasts of the Stone Age, to man,
and it's not even that, it's really a 2.5.
You have come far.
That's about the lowest I'll actually go. Because right here, this individual character, there's been a great visual, dramatic change.
But you are cunning
and I'm not saying that's really a bad thing, I'm just saying
charm will establish indestructible
the word that they just used in the narration, the word charm, the visual charm, the visual, you know, differences, all sorts of different things have just been lost. When something's getting, like, you know, a 1-star from me, that's something I'm never going to pick up again. I'm never going to use it. I'm going to just probably give it away as a gift. Those sorts of things. That's basically 76 in my opinion. It is garbage. It's a 1, not even a 1-star. It's a point, probably a 0.13 on your 1-star compatibility. You take the 1-star and you shave off 98.2% of, you know, the star you'll have about my rating on 76. It's a load of shit. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. There's a lot of issues with that. And I'm not being biased. I have no connection to the 76, you know, lawsuits. I have no concern to be. I'm just saying, in general, it was bad. I'm never even gonna think about that decision. I literally was like, oh hey, a new Fallout game. Let's put $5 deductible down at GameStop. And then, in the news you hear, lawsuit over 76. People returning the trial runs and saying it ain't done, it needs more. You hear a lot of gossip and googly-eyed nonsense over it. You hear all the horrifying truths of how terrible the gameplay is. Even the people at the gaming store said they offered the $5 down. They just should have been giving it away. I've heard a couple of times. Oh, that was something else that day. I was like, can I switch that $5 down on 76 for Kingdom Hearts 3? The person's like, absolutely. And back then, over the course of 5 years even, as a different story to jump to, I used to be at GameStop an Elite Pro member. That disappeared first couple of years, you know. They offered it 1 year for like, I forget, $150 some odd dollars for, you know, a couple of years. You didn't have to worry about it. You didn't have to think about it. You just used your card, you went, you got points. Those points you could use online or in store for stuff. 2 years later, after they released that, they took it away, and those who had it were given, you know, a longer Elite membership. At first, it kind of seemed pointless. It seemed a little unpleasant, and you never really got the explanation to why. But back then, you know, this isn't even all that long ago. Just, it was like
there are no dogs in
7-8 years ago now. This was like literally right before, oh, I think I want to say right before Skyrim actually originally came out, really. Something like that. Back in like 2012, 2013-ish era. Those kinds of things. And then you got those discounts on certain things, and you know, eventually that discount stuff, all your points saved up, you couldn't really use them for anything because the online store advertising stuff really wasn't all that great back then. But you know, inside you kind of felt like this has got potential, this is the way things go. You felt like you had the day, and then when the Elite or the Pro came out, it literally also had some similar situations. They thought about getting rid of it and just making, you know, a basic membership again, the Elite, then the Pro, and then they were debating getting rid of the Pro at one point. Then the Elite Pro disappeared, and it became just Pro membership. Then it went back to the Elite not long after, and then it's like Pro/Elite something now, some weird thing like that.
This is not wisdom.
And you know, all the years, half the time, you don't use it. It just sits there. It collects dust, even. I have a membership now, recently I recently got it on one of my many trips, and I haven't even been able to go back to the local GameStop in quite some time because I work 40 hours a week. And you know, right then and there, all the year, you know, you have things like, oh hey, how do we fix this? How does this, you know, all these things are losing their charm. As you can see, this seems really kind of cartoonish. This is the closest I can look at them. At all these like characters and things. That's how far back I can go. That ain't bad, you know. It's better than it was years ago, but it's similar to the same way. And you know, that's okay. Shit happens. Things change, you know, and what really baffles everything about this is I'm all for the equality nonsense in video gaming, but I'm just like, really? You're worried about what a fictional character is gonna wear in a video game than what you're actually wearing in real life nowadays, is what I'm running into everywhere I go. Or I hear that person's misrepresenting a whole race of people in a video game.
No man ever wetted. No.
Or here's what so-and-so did on their computer last week, and I'm like, I don't care. A video game or a computer situation is 10 times less likely to catch my attention because of how one-sided it all still seems. It's just, really, you care about what a fictional character wears over your own clothing, your own livelihood, and so on. You're watching the world walk around you with, you know, is that person ever coming back to reality in life? Kind of look at them and they walk by and they're there 5 hours later still staring at the same screen.
Without craftsmanship.
And it's just, really, it's sad. It's sad that people go that far over such... It's basically lunacy, if you ask me. It's heartbreaking, really, put it lightly. Once upon a time, you have people now looking at computer screens for even dating, phones, all the time. And you just have to ask yourself, where the hell did people go wrong? Because now it's making people like, hey, we need to uproot this stuff from the oceans. Now the old history that's still out there, that's given the world that bit of mystery, that bit of charm, that bit of, okay, there's still something to do. You have the world slowly shrinking around itself. And when it shrinks, and when it's not there no more, you're gonna wonder, what will they do next? And this is why I don't really like all the shit that goes on with the gaming industry either. They're taking away what really made them, you know, unique. They made the premise of video gaming worth sticking to. And for that reason, and a lot of other reasons, in that explanation there alone, I'm just seeing that this, sure, isn't terrible. It's really rather cartoonish. It's really rather, you know, if you were to like keep it like, make for someone who likes like more first person or second person view, make it look a little more like this area here. You get the area around you to look at. You can continue to push out, but this really, really close up crap, nah. If you want to literally go googly eye over something that goes this close, you got problems. Just like if you're watching it from up here, you kinda have a bit more issues. Just because you gotta squint to really see what you're looking at. If you like made it this close, you could see your units, where they are, what they can do. That's fine. You know, this viewpoint right here isn't terrible, and nor really is this one, because you still get a little bit of area around you to look at. But this close, this far, this far, this far, you don't need that far a view. You know, you can always see something going like this throughout most of these videos because they just do it. They have force of habit. You know? This works wonders. You know? This quick one button tap, you get the menu, good. This one, wonderful. No complaints. It gives you all your allies you can go trade with right there. You get the city states, you get the world rankings, you get the, you know, local gossip kind of crap. You get this. This is just, you know, extra tutorial stuff that's right here. Beautiful. Helpful hints. Keep it, you know, turn off the timing situations. You get timed moments where some people take forever. Great. If you got a whole day to play something. Sorry, I was looking at some things. If you got the whole day to play a game, play it.
It was luxuries like air conditioning that brought down the Roman Empire.
And all I have to say on all of it is, for this game, functionality. Real wonderful. The graphics, like I said, a little cartoonish, a little weird looking. But, you know, if you're gonna do the whole spectrum of view, you know, just, you got more ways you can add. You know, if you could do like 360 view where you're at, you know, use the little like R3, L3, turn the screen, something like that. That wouldn't be terrible. Oh, back in the day, those were also a secret button when I was young. The L3 and the R3, even on PlayStation 2, those were kind of, you know, a trade secret. You learned as you go kind of deal. That was what made those days interesting. It always left that kind of discovery feeling. When you start having the things that people know and love taken away, for example, this menu option, I can't argue it's been pretty much the same for ages. I love that part. That's like the only thing I see that is consistent with the video game series. Only addition is it's not your start turn and end game, it's your save game start turn. That's really, you know, bare bones basic. Everything else pretty much stayed similar, you know, or changed a lot. That menu's changed the smallest fraction and made the biggest difference, if you were to ask me personally. For my personal opinion, this right here, this menu option, has had the smallest changes and the biggest impact on the video game as a whole.
I don't believe in astrology. I'm a Sagittarius. That's the positive aspect of trade, I suppose. The world.
And you know, the downside of everything is these menus, options, and visuals aren't terrible. If you're playing on a smaller and more technologically advanced screen like I am, I've got one of those new, like, Roku, Amazon Fire TVs situated. Now, I don't like that either for a different note. But on this screen, it is absolutely... The thought comes to mind, you had one job and you messed it up. When I look at all this, like, looking deep down on it, you can see when the water moves now and then the little etchings on the water kind of float up. That's okay, that ain't bad. This really nice layout depiction isn't terrible, but just the overall feel, it looks kind of cartoonish. And you know, when you're really so hell-bent nowadays on people looking more realistic and breaking the immersions, the only thing you can just say is, why leave it looking cartoonish? Those guys look like they came right out of the Flintstones, more or less. Just kind of looking and just seeing it from this view. This is the closest I can get. It looks kind of cartoonish right there. And I'm not saying these is bad things, I'm just saying, if they're so hell-bent on making, for example, realistic characters, this is more realistic to nowadays as far as I've been told, and a lot of people are, you know, kind of doing nowadays. Or, for example, this one isn't half bad. This looks like your average, what you want to call it, parent nowadays. And I'm not saying that's a terrible thing, I'm just saying it's kind of unusual. But I'm just saying. If you're gonna do the realistic stuff and change something that has been there for eons, and change and leave just something like the map overall more like cartoonish, looks like someone could draw this with a crayon kind of deal. This little, like, similar, like, digital fault line there between the desert and the plains. It looks like someone could, like, easily take an eraser and shave a bit of green crayon ink on the edge off with a pencil eraser. if you're gonna change the characters to be more lifelike, change the board a little bit. Change the overall graphics. Don't just sit there and, like, you know, leave it looking like someone just drew it out of a cartoon and took it and put it into a video game. Just a hair more. And if you're going to continue to really change video games,
it's distasteful to me, but life at sea is better.
This right here, this little visual, beautiful. You've got your, if you want to look at it in...
Life ashore is distasteful to me, but life at sea is better.
And you've got the replayable quote. That works wonders. This little menu icon too, wouldn't change it for the world. These things, when you look at them, it could just pull them a little further out in the screen or overall across the screen so you can look and see what each one really is. Because from a distance, this thing looks like it's a green triangle on a background. Just saying. And that looks like someone just took a V for the spears on this one, third icon, and turned it into a pointed, the V shape, the letter V with like 2 points on the top of it from a distance. That looks like someone drew a ghost on the on the little like tower icon there. And I'm not even going to tell you what the Terracotta Army little icon there, those soldiers right there, look like. It looks like someone's got a bird on this green wheeled chariot, archer chariot icon there. I'm just saying, these are all the identifiable visuals I'm seeing. That horse looks like its nose is to contrast red Rudolph. It looks like it's the white-nosed horse from a distance right now. It's looking like Rudolph went white for for Christmas this year from an absolute distance. I'm just saying. Visually, I'm not impressed.
I like to say I practice militant mysticism.
Not impressed at all. Now, other than that, I'm putting to words that, you know, if they're so hell-bent on, you know, video game characters being more realistic, the least they could do is make sure everything looks more realistic. Make sure people can visualize exactly what they're looking at. And like I said before, though, video games aren't meant, or weren't meant originally when I was growing up, to be something that you wanted realistic. It was an escape from the normal world. That way people had a stress reliever and an outlet to go when they wanted to, well, get away from annoying people, the responsibilities of life, and so on. Because you know what? I understand the people who do like the real life like comparisons for video games. I understand why. Because you know what? That isn't a terrible way of being, you know, either. Because honestly, if you want to go out in GTA and shoot someone who looks like your neighbor instead of actually shooting your neighbor, by all means. I'd rather that than someone actually causing crime. Honestly. when people say, oh, video games were terrible back in the day, that was how I literally said, you know what? Shut the fuck up, half people. You know? Because you know what? Honestly, in those games, you could get away with all those kinds of fun things that people say now and then. You get to laugh at the fact that you just went out and drove a stolen car around. You got to enjoy, in a video game, people doing all the, and I'm not saying anything about that, I'm just saying in general, it looks fun in a GTA video game because you don't have to worry about it coming and knocking on your front door. You know what I mean? You didn't have to worry about that.
Shot an arrow into the air.
And you know what? Back then, that's okay. Back then, a lot of people, quote-unquote, could tell the difference between video game and real life. You didn't have things like today with virtual reality making someone live, you know, the life of a serial killer, that now they are terrified that they've actually done that in real life. Or they don't have to worry about that kind of thing.
I'm also interested.
Back then, the good old days of video gaming, you know, you had the knowledge to know that, hey, you're an engine person in Taraka on PS2 days. You used to go around killing dinosaurs with battle axes and bows. Now, that's not a terrible thing, you know. Half the time, I look back at some of those earlier games, I just start bawling my eyes out looking at them and playing through them over and over again. Because, you know, now and then you look at the games you have today where, for example, the Cleopatra in this looks nothing like she did in the DS days. Now it looks like your neighbor kind of deal for some people. Or as this one looks like, you know, the housewives of 9 out of 10 people. I'm just saying. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying, if they're gonna make it lifelike and take away all of the charm that made video games, you know, what they are, why bother? You know, why bother? I mean, when, for example, Fallout 4, when you actually get to play through it, kind of revisited all of what was the heyday of great video game. Sure, not everybody wanted to become a frozen popsicle back in the day, and to, you know, see what 1,000 years in the future would look like. You don't have the caveman scenario where one gets frozen in a block of ice and shows up alive 5,000 years later. You have really what made the overall world of video gaming so unique was the fact that you had things that, you know, you could play in your downtime. You didn't have to sit there and look like, you know, or, sorry, I was checking the time and whatnot. You didn't have your, you know, games look like your next door neighbor and you come out of a... Sorry, I'm watching my phone too. You didn't have to worry about someone, you know, going out and killing their neighbor because they looked funny at them. Or you didn't have to worry too much about all the violence and such that we have today. We have, as far as I've ever seen, more violence now than there was, when I was 5 years old or something like that. You didn't hear people left and right getting shot out in cities. You had people, once upon a time, back in my mother's heyday and my grandmother's heyday a little bit, you could leave your back door open and your neighbor could come in for coffee and you wouldn't have a problem in the world. Now you have people going door to door with what seems like a minigun and be like, give me all your food. You didn't have COVID. You didn't have all these issues. You had, you could trust the people you looked at. You didn't have to worry if your best friend was telling you the bullshit story, or you didn't have to worry about going out to those sorts of places. You used to have a lot more faith in other people. Now, there ain't nothing like that these days. You had people who valued life. Nowadays, people just don't care. And that's the problem. The world becoming so small a place, you get this. You get people getting hit by trains, or putting a mysterious backpack on buses and things like that. You didn't have that shit. You had school systems that would, as soon as someone even caught wind of something as stupid as all that, they had, SWAT teams right there. You had the general care, A lot of the time I look outside, you see someone walking across the street with their phone in their hand, getting plastered by traffic. And I know I say a lot of those things for reasons. I don't like this at all. I miss the days when I could look over at an old friend of mine and be like, how was your day? And not have to think someone's gonna get roadkill in the middle of, anything. You used to have life itself made more sense. Video games are nothing like they used to be. And all of this is because of virtual reality, the alternate universe crap. You didn't have to worry if, your argument with your neighbor yesterday was going to make, your frontline news tomorrow kind of deal.
The Lord made
you didn't have that stuff. Now, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I'm just seeing all the issues with all the stuff today. I rant on video games because of these shenanigans. You look at the character, that looks like someone just got out of bed halfway. And more or less the headpiece is just, someone's hair popped out everywhere. That looks like somebody, just got out of the shower. I'm just saying. I've noticed these realistic comparisons and the cartoonish board. I'm not dissing, I'm not saying as much bad. I'm trying to show you, all for educational purposes that I rant, is so that when you watch this video, you understand the fact that why all this is being done the way it is because people are complaining. Is because people are trying to I guess make video games that look like real life more than they ever should. It's for educational use. This is what 2020, 2019, 2021, and 2022 with COVID and all has brought. It's what happens when you don't sit there for some people and listen to your grandfather tell you some old stories about how you could have a single few words on TV and then have the FBI in your front doorstep. You had people who actually cared what they made, too. You had people who actually had safety as a top priority. Sum it all up. You had people who, built bridges, who built monuments, who built walls, who built things that nowadays you wouldn't even think of. Because you know what? They lived through worse times. They lived through more hazardous times. We still do today, but, on a different note. They had generations of people killing each other. They had World War I and II. And that's okay, because you know what? That's what made their generation different than ours. That's what made my generation different from probably some of you watching. Or made my generation different than my younger brother's generations. And so on. And that's okay, but you know what? For what I'm seeing today, these phones, and this technological curved TV nonsense, it puts hard-working people who can teach other people out of the job. It takes people like electronic technicians and repair stores for like TV repair. Back in my day, you could buy a TV screen and drop it into an older style TV and it'll last for another 10 years. Yes, I'm proud to say I did that myself too. I fixed one of my older TVs. It still sits up there and it still works. It's just I use it for my older game systems, my retro stuff. And it does wonders, it brings back some better times when people made stuff to last. They could easily have one or two things fixed and you're right back at what you were doing. Say, for example, you had one TV, and if the screen broke out, someone hit it, you had 4 more lined up somewhere. You just take it out, take the time, put it together. An hour or so later, if you got good at it, you were back to watching your favorite TV show. Or whatever, I'm gonna throw a easy idiom out there. You had a Joe Schmo threw his soda can at your TV without thinking about it. You had 4 more screens sitting around you could easily just drop in during like 2020, or not 2020, like 2016, 2017, that era. You had those times where, hey, I needed my computer looked at real quick. What's wrong with it? 5 seconds later, it was some simple graphical, component was slightly unhooked. You had
I cannot imagine any.
A few people who could easily spend 4 hours, fix up a computer, sell it in like 5 minutes, and have a few $100 to spend at the bar. You had 5 minutes, $30 for some old record player so-and-so got from their mother and needed a new turntable put in, and you got old vinyl records sitting around. You had things that made sense far more than they do today. Nowadays you have curved TVs so thin, the moment they break, you just take them and toss them, and you have a No TV? Can't fix it? You've got literally to go get a new one. You've got chintzy designs. Things that feel like, you know, someone took so-and-so's favorite cartoon and made it a personal laughingstock. You have characters that look like your next door neighbor. Or, you know, maybe your mother or your grandmother or something who just got out of the shower. Or so-and-so, your favorite individual next door, just got out of bed. Come on now. Back in the day, Cleopatra had her hair down to her shoulders. Long black hair. You had, you know, a different, less, you know, generic outfit. You had things that literally changed the way people looked at video games. You had, sure, you had a little more strange coloring on TVs. You had different types of TVs and things back in the day, but, I mean, relatively speaking, just in general, just looking at everything, as now I'm getting over into my tangents a little more, you have lost a lot of the old charms with these newer games these days. It's nothing like it used to be. You used to have video games where if you looked at the picture on the screen, you were, you know, having, you know, you were the cat's meow kind of deal. You had everything that someone could look at, you know, could sit down and enjoy. And then eventually, you got up, you looked outside and you said, wow, it's a new day. It's time to start fresh. It's time to do this. It's time to do that. And you know what? Nowadays, you have someone looking at the real world. Oh my God, it's terrible outside. And it's a perfectly sunny day, you know. You have so much is different nowadays. So much. You have people taking a game system like a PlayStation 5 at first and having them blow up when they tried to plug it in. I'm not saying just for, you know, it's one of those things too. A lot of different things you see with all these issues. And you know why? It's because people aren't taking the time to do things right. You've got all this, you know, schooling that can't leave so-and-so behind till they get something. You have, oh, well, they'll get it the next time round. Or they'll do this better the next time round. Great. When's the next time gonna come? And sure, you have, like, people in their 30s or 40s who haven't graduated because they didn't know half the stuff back then that they do today. I mean, for truth, honest to goodness kind of deal, there are some places that, you know, modern age has benefited from, and there are a lot of things people have faltered in.
Politics is the art of the possible, the attainable, the art of the next best.
Not really.
If I were again beginning my studies.
Anyway, for example, political agendas and those sorts of things, that's a different story. I'm not even going to get into that. Reason I don't like it is because of stuff like the gaming community and Trump. Just saying it. I'm just saying it. That's now over with. That's all I had to say on that note. And let's put it this way. I'm gonna say it now. I'm not saying anything like this for, you know, just shits and giggles. I'm saying it because, for demographically speaking, in life, when you have people who are going to sit there and talk crap for so long, you're going to have someone who's going to just sit there and say, shut the fuck up, eventually. I'm going to say it. And for this instance, the gaming community has suffered greatly at the hands of equality-based scenarios, or modernizations, or these, you gotta account for everybody's. Sometimes you didn't have that.
People believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Engineers believe that if it ain't broke, it doesn't have enough features yet.
Right there. Right there. That could not have come up at a better time. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it isn't broke yet, it's not got enough features. That is the greatest way to sum up everything. Right now, everybody is walking into the if it ain't broke yet scenario. I'm looking at it from the if it's not broken, don't fix it scenario. This is where a lot of things just kinda, went one direction. That's all I have to say on all that, though. Now, to sum it all up, the reason all that actually comes out into play is you can see it in the video game, in the performance of one's work. I'm looking at this video game and I'm seeing turmoil on the people who made it. Because I'm seeing how close do you want to see those individual little stone holes on the Stonehenge? I'm seeing this general map appearance. Looks like someone drew it with a couple cartoons. I'm seeing those little fish right there. I'm seeing that as, someone's free time, free side thought. I'm seeing over here someone's listening to the news way too much. Someone's watching, someone get out of the shower a lot. Because they've detailed the outfit so much that it looks like this person just finished washing dishes or just got out of the shower, because the texture just looks like, someone's wearing a slightly wet outfit. And you can see all of the dark and light patches on the outfit from those yellow, stripe areas across the top of her chest there. You can see all the individual color patterning. It looks like a diamond spade, white and reddish violet mixture, like someone just got a wet splash of water on their clothing. And up here, looks like someone forgot to use a comb. And instead of it just being hair, it's, a metal piece. Someone just colored it over with a gold spray, so and so, and let it go. Not her dress there looks like someone's nightgown. It looks like someone took a lightly pink nightgown and just kind of blotted out most of the pink with white. And it looks like someone just, took someone's neighbor and modified it so it looked kind of like Cleopatra did. change the hair color, change the makeup, and so on. You've got someone just getting out of bed. That looks like someone's cereal bowl of like, what is that? Oh, someone put a bowl of some weird marshmallow fluff mixture of some kind of cereal on the table in front of you. And I'm not saying this isn't terrible, I'm just saying, for example, if they're going to be listening to the news, or, you know, watching themselves get out of bed in the morning, come on now. And gonna leave cartoons everywhere. Looks like someone's Saturday afternoon special. If I wanted something like that, I'd just have someone go try to find someone's, you know, TV who's willing to sit around and watch cartoons all day. If I wanted to deal with that. Life's not about being at your TV screen and seeing, you know, your neighbor on the TV. It's about being able to remove yourself for a little while from the actual viewing point of the modern world. It's an escape so people can relax. Right now, I ain't even close to relaxed with this. I find these games as they were really relaxing. And when I picked this game up, that's exactly what I intended this to be. And all the things I've seen about it throughout the ages, throughout the entire time of playing this game and the games before it, this game killed a lot of this game's fan base from before. That's all I have to say. Now, with that said, let's just kind of get into the video game. Smooth gameplay. I'm still giving my review and thoughts on the game as well. When I look at this game, this is why I got off in such a long tangent, is because I'm seeing the modern day in this video game. I don't like that at all. That's half the reason they lost 1 star, just automatically. Is because it looks like someone's rough Saturday morning. Just made into a fantasy world-based video. Instantly 1 star lost for that. Now, mechanics overall, right now, run fine. At, like, say about turn 158, you see the graphical glitches start to happen. You see a city-state's name or a rival civilization city name sitting right in the middle of nowhere. instantly we have another scenario starting. Another reason I shaved off about half a star for this is currently you will constantly have these barbarians show up at about maybe 3rd to 9th turn, depending on how fast you get your stuff moving. And eventually it just becomes so redundant that the point is, like, why even bother? It's just like you get wave after wave after wave of these things. You get constantly points where they're just standing around for a century. You get points where the barbarians are just constantly 400 times your area level. You've got knights coming in first off the get-go. You have those sorts of things with the barbarian clans and such. Sure, you can, try to barter with some of them, but if they're right on your doorstep start of the game, that's basically already game over right then and there. And I've seen that many, many times. Oh, for example, swordsmen. We're not even in, early Renaissance. Swordsmen are like just after or late Renaissance era when you start getting them. And they just keep coming. They don't stop. They don't slow down. And sometimes they're even further along than you are. And you're just like, why are they even barbarians at that point? Really, that's what it comes down to. Is the barbarians are as developed and not sometimes more developed than you are, and yet they are not able to be civilized, they're not able to do this or that, and you're just like, interesting. It's just like someone looked over at the brutish neighbor that they have who goes out and tries to cause as much havoc as possible, and just made him wear some kind of old-timey clothing. And you're just like, is that Phil from next door kind of deal? Doing it his usual shenanigans again? And it's just like, what is it this time? Kind of deal. Because they can have slingers, they can have warriors, they can have swordsmen, knights, like frickin' 400 tier archers, crossbowmen, and you've got only warriors still. That's just like, what is it this time? What is it then? What is it now? And they just keep coming in waves. I'm seeing a lot of the feeling in this game. A lot of the points in this game are just modernized things in costumes. I'm seeing all that from just this, spectacle that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the modern world tossed back about like they've gone to a really bad and never-ending costume party. And if I wanted to see the modern world in such a way, all I have to do is walk down the street a little bit and watch the bar parties going on. Seriously. Seriously. I'm not pulled into this video game as much as the ones that came before it. This is the overall vibe I get from just playing this one video game. I'm not seeing, I'm not seeing that old charm that the video games need. I'm not seeing people caring that their work looks like someone's, you know, crude ash drawing or medievalizations of someone's lesser Saturday evening, Saturday afternoon, Saturday morning. I'm seeing, like, you know, someone just, you know, watch their, you know, I'm seeing a lot of I don't give a crap in this video game. I'm seeing someone took a Saturday afternoon and just kind of compiled it into some basic, ancient, evil form of humanity. And I am completely not impressed. I'm seeing a lot of reason that the way it is now for these video games, like I said, White-Nosed Rudolph. That stone looked like it came from, you know, the internet and was just sculpted down to maybe about half a millimeter of the, what you want to call it, gigabyte size fragment, something incredibly small, something generic, and I'm just like, really? They couldn't do anything more for that? This is what they came up with? This is how that goes? If I wanted someone's Saturday morning, I would just be, you know, okay. What else are you gonna throw at us? Are you gonna throw Joe Schmo's gimpy leg with a, you know, where the barbarians become just a constant threat on the end of an island and you're surrounded? And I'm just saying this because right now I'm looking at this like somebody had to have been doing something to mess up this much, to see these flaws and not give a damn. Now, for him, he just looks like someone just took a medieval knight, scrubbed off the armor plating color, threw on black and some whatever other colors, and kind of made the armor transparent on those shoulders. And then just kind of left it the rest of the way. I'm just saying, it looks like they took basically your general knight picture of someone from, you know, medieval castle painting and kind of just digitalized it. Changed the armor a little bit, there you go. And not a bad way to go about it. It just seems very piss-pot poor done. And other than that, I don't have much to really bash it for. But it's missing that overall, just that charm that the older ones of the series had. This one, sure, it's focused on building the empire. There are some that are said to have just straight war. There are some that are said to just have straight, you know, civil, you know, affairs like this one does. There are some even just based on the scenario, and yet here we are. This just looks overall cartoonish. The voiceover isn't half bad, though, for all these little narrations and things. At least that kind of gives it that 0.5 era. They picked someone for the, you know, narrations who fits pretty well. And they used the same voice actor for it, the same narrator for these. Fairly well. Other than that, I don't have really
Man
that much
suffers
to pick
only
on.
because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun.
Great quotes, great real life, comparisons, all that is just its traditional charm. It's just that small bit that's managed to stay consistent. And that's really nice. That's the great part about these games is, sure, they have one issue, two issues usually. They don't usually have cartoonish real-life depictions of the world and people in them. Or they don't have this just generally reused vibe like these ones do. This looks like someone took it out of a little kid's sketch pad, like I've been saying a lot. The map itself. Not the buildings, not the little area depictions, not the character depictions, just the actual bare bones map. This looks like someone colored it out of a kid's coloring book. This one looks like, oh hey, they actually might have depicted someone walking over the beach. This looks like someone's mood stimulation going from way up here where they're happy and their day started to way the frick down here where, they're under the ground kind of deal. This one just kind of looks like, someone took a booger and looked at it for an hour. I'm not gonna argue, I'm not gonna lie. If this is the general, synopsis, I'm looking at this little chunk of map that I have. I'm not looking over here yet and depicting anything yet. This doesn't really scream too well thought out either. You see, it just looks overall visually like demoralizing. And it looks... Now, these depictions of the map and the way it just smoothly transitions a little bit at a time, wonderful. This boat depiction, I actually feel like someone looked at an old treasure map and seen this. That fish looks like the depiction you'd see in an old apothecary notebook or an old fisherman's journal. It looks like someone could sketch and draw that like a motherfucker and knew what they were doing. At this up-close shot, that looks like something you'd see in a fish depiction of a wanted poster like they had in Captain Ahab's time. That looks the part. These mountains look like someone took a rock and just scanned it for 5 hours and then just decided, oh hey, can we just try to digitalize the rock? This little map / water spot, I like that. I like the way that looks. Just because that looks like someone actually watched waves for hours on end to make sure every little follicle of that spot was right. And that's not even half discovered yet. Now, this looks like desert. Right here, this little half-discovered spot that I'm running over a lot. That looks like something you'd see in the sand dunes. That looks like actual sand. And that's going to go away the moment you start walking over it. The overall visuals that I'm looking at, before I do anything to the map, look more realistic and more accurate to what real world sand is than, oh hey, someone just took the cartoonish picture of the world of sand. That little ripple stuff, sure, that works in one spot. But this thing, this kind of look, okay, who's taking the pictures off the, the magazine? Or, hey, Are you watching this sand dune? This is what you'll see. These all kind of work the way they look right there. This right here in general looks like an actual freaking desert. You have all these different textures, all these different looks. Now, as you go along, these ripples become these things. That transition, fine, that kind of works. But when it goes like this, you see there's almost nothing really to tell about that tile. There's nothing to look at there. This one has those weird little ripples. This kind of thing, you will not ever truly see. It'll look like this for maybe like 4 miles, 3 miles, something like that in an actual desert. And I've seen it because I've looked at a beach for quite a long time. I've seen how it goes. This is when there's a ton of sand, ton of, like moisture based and all these different types of, the way the movements and the molecules go around, the dust in the air, all this. And it comes to stuff like this after a while. Because I've seen this in a lot of beaches, and it goes from stuff like this, right now, recently, to stuff like this, back a couple of years ago. This is what you would see like maybe 7, 8 years ago. And then it's back to stuff like this again, or this again, and so on. It just is not, it doesn't look well done. It looks really polished, but it doesn't look geometrical or graphically sound. This all works kind of nicely, but that's more effort than one should put in, especially if they're going to make the rest of it look like a cartoon or as realistic as possible, or generic for the one Spain guy. I'm just saying, this is why it loses half a star with me. It's just this quite blah phase, no care, no compassion really to design the overall, full graphics layout. If they're gonna make this or this or this kind of deal, these look like they're, interpretations of somebody's neighbors, somebody's life. Somebody who watched images on a computer, who took those images and who just kind of moderated and modified some of the features and the appearances. That kind of does work. But in the long run, all these colors make this guy look like he's what you want to call it? He's got some weird multi clothing finality going on. I'm trying to be politically accurate. I don't want to say the term I've been taught to call it, but I'm kind of, in my opinion, he looks like he's cross-dressing. I'm just saying. He looks like he's got a plate of armor on his chest that has been dyed, that is some kind of modern representation of what might 500 years ago look like. And he's got women's translucent shoulder pads on, and they're just like some kind of cloth, and his arms look like he's just a computerized Tootsie Pop for some of those depictions. His arm, the lower forearm, looks like the stem of what you'd see today going up to a lollipop. The material makes his arm look like the Tootsie Roll stick for some of these suckers and lollipops and things. His shoulder there, like I said, translucent arm guards, arm clothing, or the top of the lollipop. It's messed up. He looks really like, I'm gonna just sit here and be, someone's digitalized, crude representation of armor. And I'm gonna stand here and hold it with dignity, even though I know it's wrong. Kind of look right now. You already know what I think of this one and this one. I'm just saying in general, I'm having a good old time. Just kind of talking about that in itself. This looks like the Imperial City, you know, that you see in Mulan. You see the very like, hey, how you doing down there kind of look, and you can tell. And all this, just, if they're gonna make a game like this, and they're gonna change so much of what gave the game charm, as one of the last original of the fan base from way back in the day, when, you know, it really had that charm, back then you could look at a Civilization game and the case itself for the little DS cartridges would look like cartoon Uncle Sam pointing his fingers at you saying, I want you to play this video game, kind of deal. And you know what? That really worked back then. And when you got in there, the game, when you actually played the video game, you get something resoundingly beautiful. It's addictive. It's continuous. It wants to bring you back. You have that actual genuine care. I don't get that vibe from this video game. I get, like I said, somebody's rough Saturday morning. And it just is plastered onto a map as a video map. Back in the day, my great-grandmother used to call TVs flashing picture boxes. My great-grandmother called them flashing picture boxes, and that's really what they used to be, way back in the day. Now, you have stuff like these curved TVs nowadays. You don't have half a dozen things that, you know, once upon a time used to be there. You don't have that charm. You've taken something that had... When I used to play Civilization Revolutions on the Nintendo DS Lite, I looked at that and I was like, this actually kind of looks like history. This looks like a truly one-of-a-kind generic form of the history book. And that worked. That made it really seem like someone had a genuine idea of where to go with something. Back then, made more sense that I'm seeing today is just gone. It's not there no more. I don't see, you know, even so much as a care. I see generic. I see genuinely like it's lost really the heart and the soul of what made these games really addictive. I literally discussed this with a couple of people not too long ago. Our usual chit-chat buddies. I see a couple of their points. I don't disagree. And, you know, I know some of them would say, oh, hey, this isn't this, this is that. I'm like, this isn't for them. It's just my generalization on what I see is going on with this game. Overall, this video game's full rating from me is, like I said, 2.5 out of 5. Just because it was hastily seeming like it was put together, and just overall, I've looked at this so many times. I've seen all these cartoonish things so much. I see the way people are looking at the realistic form of people and taking it modern and making it a video game scenario. I don't like it whatsoever. And many times has this been the case with a lot of video games. It's not just the Civilization franchise, but this is the best and most prominent form of, well, a lack of compassion in the video game industry. And it didn't used to be that way. I've said it many times, when EA gave up on the Mercenary series, they lost a gem. They gave up on a gem.
If you're the bank one.
Now, Fallout is the same way. They've taken something on the opposite side of the spectrum. They've made something that would continuously be kicked over, kicked again. And Civilization's following that same trend too on that side of things. They've pushed something so far, they've gone and kicked what they had.
Sometimes
and it's really just a sad, overused situation. I'm singing this way too much in all the games. As it progressed throughout the ages from the early DS forms of video games. Sure, you had a smaller system and such to deal with, but I mean, you can't hastily throw something together and expect it to go over well.
The man who has grit enough to bring about the... It's all papers and...
You can't constantly keep, oh hey, let's just reuse this. Let's just move this over. You gotta do it right. And right now, I see this as hastily paste and copy and paste.
Set your course by the...
I see no real, genuine love in this game anymore. Really, nothing. I don't see this at all in this situation. Revelations and Revolutions, you had, you know, a general concept that was continuing. The war-based scenario worked. You had characters that you could, you know, look at and, like, actually think that they were, you know, something that matched the actual representation. This, like I said, sure, it works. The premise seems to be there. The base form of it seems to be there. But yet, nothing that made it really what it used to be is actually here no more.
If it does not bring you happiness, will at least help you be miserable in comfort.
And that's just, you know, that's why it just seems really, you know, unpleasantly, you know, just a continuation of what used to be. They just kept kicking it over, and now it's just like, okay, this is this. Let's just try to find some other way to, you know, make that keep pushing itself. And a lot of the times, that just doesn't work. For games like Civilizations, there's always got to be a little something else that's changed. This much, though, at this point in time, if, you know, they had, like, say... Here's what I say, what they could have done with this. I say the moment, you know, you're able to change, make your civilization go to the stars and whatnot, if you're doing science, they should, like, at least switch it up to send your entire civilization off to the stars. And basically, your opponents still fight somewhere on Earth. You find another place to go. Those kind of things. The migration. The alternization. If you're gonna do something, go all out. Make it worth the price that is paid for. Don't sit there and try to reuse and keep pushing something. You know, make it something unique. Give it that attention that it deserves. If you're not gonna do that, you're in the wrong line of work. You're just out there to make a quick buck, and you know it's gonna just make everybody more angry. You know it's gonna make things worse. Why bother doing it? Here's the situation I deal with on a daily basis. I work in a business that I love. I like what I do for a living. Now, it took me a long time to get to that point. My everyday job during the week is something I can sit there and do for another 20, 30 years. As long as that effort is there, as long as that compassion is there. You know, something very few people actually do. And it is because of all these concerns, these issues. There's no, well, if this happens, this happens. It's all, how can we use this to help these individual issues kind of deal. Instead of, this happens, this happens. This goes, that goes. There's more, they did this, who else is going to do something different? Who else is going to do this? Who's doing that? Sure, there's sometimes that works. But I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing what used to be. In the video game world, what used to be still works. There's just got to be a way to change it to make it better. Right now, I'm not seeing it with this. I'm not seeing it with Civilizations. I'm seeing 76 in most of these games. And that's a problem. Compared to, I'm saying Civ 6 is still better than 76 by far. I'm just saying I'm seeing that trend. I'm seeing the, oh, it just works scenario. When no, it really don't. But thank you all for watching. I hope you at least found this video educational and more insightful on my thoughts on Civilization 6. We're reaching about 2¼ hours. This is a good enough video for me to make. I hope you all tune in again. And maybe if you're into these kind of things, let me know more of what you want me to see and what you don't want to see. Kind of deal. The more I know you like videos, the more you tune in for them, the more I'm willing to make these videos. If you want to see something like just straight gameplay, don't want to hear me talking, say so. If you want to see, all sorts of games and things you can do, you want to see more of the D&D stuff that I did before, or the incentive like in the Red Dead video recently, I just thought this was a decent way of reviewing what had already been done. Come Halloween, though, or a couple weekends from now, I will be probably jumping out of Red Dead for a while and pulling out something else just for, something to change. We'll go back to Red Dead later on. I've already kind of reached the point of where I've gone to in that story. And I'm just like, I don't want to go any further. We're right where the kids were about to rob Arthur to find the city of Saint Denis in that video. But this is Civilization 6. We're bringing it to an end. Chapters closed. If you want to see more, if you want to see more gameplay, you want to see more people in this, you want me to come back to it at a point, leave it in the comments. I'll have to look at it eventually anyway. For the comments, that is. Please just, for those of you in the videos, keep the chat, friendly, open, No comments, no religious views, no political views, apart from general synopsises. What I do is okay because, you know, I'm just ranting about the game the way I look at this right here. I threw my little political view on it just because Trump and the gaming community had their odds a couple years back. It's done with, it's over with, so on and so forth. That's what I said in this video. I don't like the idea of the way games have been just similar like to what they did before. Civ 6 is a cut and paste scenario with just a little altering, a little editing, and you know, I don't like it the way it is. I liked it the way it used to be. Other games will be going back to at some point. Red Dead, probably a ways away, sometime next spring maybe. I'll be playing other games. The next game I think I'm going to pull out is one I've got digitally, Deep Rock, or maybe a little bit of something else to go along with. That's a game I can kind of enjoy. I'm just going to kind of try to step away from Civilization and Red Dead for a while, just because there's a lot of like split hairs, a lot of close quarter videos, things that, you know, otherwise I don't like talking about. I don't really like talking about Civ 6 or Red Dead just because of all the split hair moments you have there, all these big issues, the things we cover, the topics. Kind of just for some of the games want to sit back and enjoy. This probably will be one of the few videos I do in the next couple of weeks, just because I've got things kind of amping up in my own life personally. Things are changing, getting a little better, getting a little worse in some things. Winter's coming. Now, like I said, I'm probably going to take a look at Deep Rock or maybe another Fury of Dracula, a couple other video games. I might jump into Outer Worlds or No Man's Sky, some of the other games that I've played, all of which these games I have lived through, played through, enjoyed for quite some time. I don't like how some of these games make me feel, particularly the ones we're on. But, like I said, it's just how it is. I'm not going to change my opinions on something because someone doesn't like it. I'm just going to say it now. What you see is what you get. That's how it is. This is how I see it. This is what I think of it and why. Some videos I might pull out some like Magic the Gathering cards or something like an unboxing that I do on the side. I eventually want to try to get a camera so that way when I go live that I'll be able to show you what I'm actually doing. I want like a live camera that when I broadcast a video game I can show up on screen so you can kind of see as I'm talking. I kind of do like the fact that I have my little icon up there though. It's just, you know, one of those things I do plan to get eventually. Not right away, because there's a lot of reasons. Right now the place I'm living in is a mess, but eventually we'll get there. Everything is a work in progress. Like I said, probably Deep Rock, something like that. One of those digital games, maybe one of the other actual games that I have copies for. Like I said. Now, another really bad game that used to have a great company behind it that has gone off the deep end is the Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duels. Konami seems, in my frank and humble opinion, to have jumped off the deep end into the 76 trend that it just works and it just don't work scenario. And that is, as in some of the videos, a lot of cheaters, a lot of people misusing codes, a lot of like, oh, you can only report 3 people a day. Even though you report them, you get deducted stuff for it for doing them a favor and trying to help them solve some of these issues, these emulations, these sorts of things. These small issues on that note. I've covered in other videos. I don't like that, but this is just one of those other companies that have kind of fallen from grace. Civilization hasn't really hit that note and still could save and turn around. I think they can. I think there's a lot of potential that they missed. And this Civilization 6 just, especially with its microtransactions, just doesn't do it. It just doesn't solve the issues. It just seems to follow the same trend as 76. Especially with the cut and dry, easel that they're using. What's here isn't supposed to, and what is here isn't what it should be, and it's not even close to what it could be. It's it's like subpar Division. It's acceptable, but it's certainly subpar from what it used to be. Thank you, and join in again on another video. Hopefully, in a video that I don't have to sit there and critique as much. I'm seeing most of these games kind of just go downhill like something that's just been kept kicked around, kept being pushed forward, kept having these things that, sure, they worked as long as you put the effort in. And I'm not seeing half the effort that should be here. This little menu I forgot to touch on, I like quite a bit. It tells you how the buttons work. It gives you the basic, synopsis for the game controls. And all of the other, useful tidbits and tips that you can use these for. But there's still more to be desired on a lot of things. But again, thank you for watching.